Okay, so here we are in Tanto Monta, about to start the third turn, and what has happened so far? Alright. I guess sort of the big events. Catalonia fell apart, surrendered, whatever, but the French and the Aragonese are still at war. Well, the French and the Spaniards as a whole. I cheated in a number of ways, errors and whatnot. Uh-oh, my battery. It's not ready. Oh boy. Okay. Son of a bitch. Yeah, it's like the rest of the videos, huh? Okay, hit it enough. Then you walk away and it's like, oh, you're not going to hit me again. It's just like a little kid. You got to be constantly whacking it if you want it to be good. It's the reason I don't have children. Okay. I screwed up in the first turn, well, in sort of the setup instructions. I blame the game for it, but I blame the game for every screw up I have, so don't worry about that. The French did not start the game at war with Burgundy, which they should have, and I apologize to the person that pointed that out, because I didn't quite understand what they were saying. I thought that the way I handled the card was what they were pointing out as being wrong. Actually, in the setup instructions, they're supposed to have it, and he kind of said that, and I got confused. Portugal ended up making some gains in North Africa, and in the second turn, they came to a peace, which gave the Henry the Navigator School of Sagres, whatever, which has given some certain capabilities, and the Portuguese have quickly expanded. They didn't get much resources from, well, they didn't get any resources from the colonies they have. Now they have a settlement here, a settlement here. This one's got a fortress. They protected it with a moat, but they got nothing. What else of any interest? The Beltranejos have been being beaten up by Isabella. She has a bigger army, whatever, and King Alfonso died. He's been replaced by Joao II, who has reinitiated kind of an anti-North African stance. He doesn't have to stay like this. Spring redeployment, he could, if he can come to some agreement with the North Africans again for another turn, he can swing his way up into Portugal. But he has less advantages than Alfonso had in terms of managing the Beltranejos. Alfonso was the heir. You would think that Joao would be too, but he's not, because I don't remember what the marriage circumstances are. But I think Alfonso married Joanna. I don't remember. Anyway, he can't command the Beltranos units as far as I know. And go look it up. I'm tired of looking shit up in this game. And let's see, what else? Venetians landed at Otranto. They're starting to generate victory points for Lord of Italy for the French at a very early date. The French don't have to turn to Italy to get the Lord of Italy points, which is kind of cool. We have a new French king, Charles VIII, just as we have a new Portuguese king. Found out that and this is actually how I found out the Burgundy card. I went to look up, hey, how come Louis XI or whatever his name is it Louis XI? Yeah. Wasn't, on the board. He has a counter, and I was supposed to replace it with Charles VIII. Well, he was in the setup, and, well, the thing that is not in the setup instructions, but is below them in the card draw phase. And if you want to hear about my gripes about that, listen to the last video. The event Muli Hassan of Granada, another fuck up I made that was caught by the same player, which was that the Nasrid Kingdom can't attack the Spanish. Well, he declared war on the Spanish in turn 1, because I can't remember all the special rules in the game, which he could not have done. He tried to lay siege to Granada, didn't get it. I reversed the war, or I undid the war at the end of that. I mean, these games generate alternate history anyway. I don't think it's that terrible a thing if I fuck up some stuff. Kind of sucks that the starting condition of the Burgundian War wasn't in play, but it's played out in a way that isn't too damaging. This played out in a way that wasn't too damaging. The only thing the Nasrid War did was really kind of hurt the North Africans' points, and they're kind of in last place, and it took some of their effort away from defending North Africa, which has put them kind of behind the 8 ball in certain ways. They're in a position where they can go to war with the Portuguese again, and that's a very cheap war to declare. Struggled with some of the effects of resources at the end of the turn. It's really a painful thing because you've got to play a card to play a resource, and then you can play one resource for each card that you play to extend your turn. It's just a painful mechanism that I don't like. I don't think that was in Here I Stand. I do think it was in Virgin Queen. I think it's one of the things that probably turned me off of Virgin Queen and angered me. I've seen it again, I believe, in Time of Wars, which is the East European game based on this system, without input from the designer. Ed, I can't remember his last name now. I should. It's Beach, isn't it? Ed Beach, yeah. And let's see, the Spaniards are slowly putting themselves into position in the Canary Islands. And not a lot else has happened, right? The game seems to move kind of slowly, it feels like. Even though there's all this weight and busyness on it, it doesn't feel like a hell of a lot's happening. Now, it may be the time period, whatever, but I really do feel like I'm not getting a real grasp on accomplishing these big goals. Oh, the Muslims attempted some piracy. The first time I attempted it, did not. I got something. I got like a piracy victory point somewhere, right? No, I don't know what I got. I lost a ship. The second time I attempted it, I ended up not getting anything and not having any reserve cards. In fact, no one has any cards in reserve at the end of the turn. People are able to keep their cards for admin. So we're walking into this third turn. There's a bunch of Portuguese nows. Those don't just come back. They become available to be built. We have to add new cards to the deck, etc. Oh, back in the first turn, the Pope died, and we got a new Pope. The French kept control of the papacy somehow. They gained control of Genoa as well through Muslim activities, and that's part of why they're lords of Italy now, is that they have a lot of allies in Italy. And if they can start capturing more cities, they're going to get more victory points each turn. That becomes more valuable to them than most of the rest of what they can do. If I can get to a peace with Spain, I would really, really like that. A peace without losing Roussillon, which is key. So yeah, everybody's kind of torn in multiple directions, right? So First of all, everybody's got a couple of powers except the French, who lost one of theirs. But, the Portuguese have this, hey, we kind of have good things happening in North Africa. We might want to reopen the war. But if we can come to an alliance and an agreement not to, that's great and all. We kind of want to pursue the Beltranejos, trying to keep them alive for as long as we can. There are advantages to that. It's kind of weird, because you give victory points for each space you control when the power surrenders, which kind of means, and this is how Catalonia went, you kind of want to fail fast. Now, Spain is okay with that as well. So, like, with Aragon taking Catalonia, they basically took Barcelona, which is sufficient to cause it to surrender. And the French got a fair amount of victory points off of territories that the Catalonians were holding. If this stagnates into a regular war, both sides kind of lose out. The Spanish, both sides because they're expending resources, but honestly, the losing side is best off to lose the war fast, which is something the Portuguese may want to consider. Look, we're in a competition with France right now for victory points. Spain is not in the lead. It might be to our best interests to not prevent the Beltranejos from falling. Because when they fall, and Seville is not one of our homes, when they fall, I'm not even sure I can be here. Fuck. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to move here. This is not one of my home territories. I gotta fix this. And then these go back for 2. Yeah, the change making in this, sure, I didn't have to do it the way I just did it, but the change making in this game is one of the cumbersome issues with it. When Beltranejos falls, that's a situation in which if it's like the Catalan, and I think it is, in which you count up what spaces they have, and the Portuguese get victory points for those spaces. So if you fight a long, prolonged war, and the Spaniards slowly take everything from you, and you hold out for a long time, and maybe you're more successful, maybe hold out for the whole game, you never get the victory points for it. Whereas if you fall quickly, you get lots of victory points. Now, it's possible to do interesting things. Among other things, the Catalans can kind of keep the Aragonese busy. But now they're not busy, and, the French have an exposed border. So there's some disadvantage to not having that civil war continue. But in a lot of ways, in terms of straight victory points or whatever, it's just to my advantage to get out of it. And if I can come to a peace with Spain, that would help a lot. Unfortunately, there are restrictions on the Treaty of Barcelona, and I don't know if I'm allowed to be at peace until that happens. I don't remember. There may be a restriction, but in diplomacy, I can give away Roussillon. If the Treaty of Barcelona event is played, it triggers it. And during my spring deployment, I can give cards away, but the current war is left unaltered. I don't know if there's something that's preventing me from declaring peace, though, without the treaty, which might not be a terrible thing. I don't see anything here under Treaty of Barcelona, but that doesn't mean it's not buried somewhere in the rolls, right? Like the Nasrid Kingdom not being able to go to war with Spain. And then once they do, they're not able to go to peace. I know that. But I don't know where to find it. I kind of feel like Spain and France are locked in a war, until the Treaty of Barcelona, but honestly, it doesn't appear to be the case here. And there's an if they're currently at war, so I think we could actually come to peace with the Spaniards. That would not be great for Spain because part of Naples has been chewed away. But it might allow, I don't know what the Aragonese would do if they're not fighting the French. That's kind of the problem. Like, having cleared up the Catalan problem, I'm not sure what else they could do. But on the other hand, getting the French out means they won't be heading for this goal, which is like the Portuguese and the French supporting the Beltranejos and meeting up there. If a force from each meets up there, they each get a couple of victory points. That's kind of fallen out of reach. And if there's a peace, who the hell knows what France might do? They could commit more forces to like Milan and Metz and whatnot. But again, does that really hurt Spain? The thing that hurts Spain is Naples is likely to generate a peace situation. So it's something to consider. That apparently they can go to peace. They're not forced to go to stay at war. But I'm trying to think of what Aragon would want to do. If that's the case. Like, their interests are this stuff. And Roussillon and Navarre, Spain as a whole might get an advantage out of it because I could play more cards on the Beltranejos. But I felt like I was able to just sort of block the French here and tie down their forces with forces of mine that don't really matter to me. I can't use the Aragonese and the Canaries. So yeah, I don't know, man. All right, that's more than enough. My battery is blinking. So somewhere in here, leaders and military units from Castile and the Nasrid Kingdom of Granada, somebody pointed this one out, of Granada are able to fight in the Gibraltar space even if those two powers are not currently at war. So, actually, I more or less didn't cheat, except in the sense that I think the Muslims wasted a card. Because all they did was advance into Gibraltar. And they actually get an advantage if they manage to seize control before this happens. Now, I vaguely remembered something about this, which is why I went to take Gibraltar, actually, I think. Maybe not. I can't really remember my mindset at the beginning. But, yet again, more little special little magic rules to just, fuck with everything. So, in a lot of ways, one of my bigger mess-ups was the attack on Gibraltar, which apparently I could have done. I just couldn't have declared war to do it. Anyway, like I said, I don't think this is a game that is, at all suitable for competitive play. That's my opinion. I feel the same way about Virgin Queen, too. Or at least my memory of it is that I walked away with maybe less of it, but many of the same feelings I'm having with this one. That doesn't mean that I can't enjoy it. And that doesn't mean maybe some people can enjoy playing it competitively. To me, the rules overhead in both, not just rules, but the amount of things, the amount of game state that's present that you have to keep track of, just doesn't suit very well towards the kind of competitive play that something like Here I Stand actually is able to excel at. But that could just be I'm unable to handle the rules overhead in that fashion. I don't know. I know that with the modern Euros, which I feel like we're seeing a reflection of what's happening with Euros over the decades, happening with the Here I Stand system. And, you know, it's a matter of let's just throw more and more crap in until finally, you know, the system just breaks everybody. It is Thursday, and I knew it was raining out, but I wanted to go down and check my garbage. But I don't put a coat on or anything like that. I throw a hat on. I opened the door, and yeah, it was raining a little too much. Can't hear anything up here even. I thought, you know, it's the difference between being up here and downstairs in terms of like, I heard heavy rain. Anyway, here we are at the start of the card draw phase, and this is turn 3. I guess I don't really have much to say. Just gotta work my way through and see what new people come in and everything. I'll be back. A couple big changes. John II of Aragon is gone, and the great captain is in. And the Nazarids lose their leader and get Tom Bombadil, who's not as good. Although I think Moulay was still alive, to tell you the truth, but I don't really remember. Like I read the history. Next turn, Isabella goes away, is replaced by one of the Dukes of Alva. We're also seeing the first of the marriage options coming up. Isabella and Alfonso of Portugal. They both can die, and did. So, we shall see. The first time we've got a replacement fortress because the Portuguese built one. Fortresses on the rest of the world make a lot more sense. First of all, they're cheaper, and they're kind of defending a singular thing, but also they affect the piracy and everything, which is very likely there. So I think they're kind of a good idea. And we got to roll for the mess. It's interesting. It's starting out in a Beltranejos space. Home cards, Papal Bull, and deal with the duck. Okay. To the calculations for cards, Muslims still only getting 4. Sucks to be them. The French and Portuguese at 5, Spain at 6. France, of course, has the Papal Bull, which gives them an extra card in there. Everybody's got their home cards and whatnot. Now Spain has the extra home card. Portugal just got an extra one. I don't know if they're allowed to use all 3. I think they are. I think the people who lose them might be allowed to use them. I can't recall. I'll look it up later. It's just, there's so much overhead in terms of, like, you know, modifications to sort of core mechanisms that it's just annoying to remember. I guess we deal them out, and then we place some resources, and then I take a break. Setting up a turn is enough effort, especially the card shuffling. This deck is getting big. Big decks are hard to shuffle. But it's especially worse because of the armored cards. Those heavy-duty cards are I don't know what to call them. They're just horrible. They really strain the hands and whatnot. You know, and I don't have tiny hands. Anyway, I think I wasn't paying attention to this. Would have had to go back to port. Just didn't see it. You see it? Yeah, we're gonna need more hands to do that. But yeah, we're done. Nobody's got any resources in the warehouse, which feels a little weird. Not sure why. Oh, immediate trigger type things, because the French got one from Medtrade and stuff like that. That's going to put me to diplomacy, and I'm in no shape to do that right now. Up here, it's past raid time, but I've got like a secondary app that I have to run while I'm running raid. I don't know if I actually have to today. It's useful, but there's some weird interactions, and everything has to shut down in a certain order, and things don't shut down quickly. So anyway, I've got some extra time that I'm up here trying to do the diplomacy phase. I had a nice nap. It's weird. I had a full night's sleep, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe like 7 hours or so, and then I had like a 2 or 3 hour nap after I played the last of this that I played. I'm looking through some of the cards to try to make decisions for the diplomacy stuff. And the Portuguese have a particularly interesting one, the Master of the Atlantic, a mandatory. Portugal gets victory points based on the spaces that they have on the North African coast. And if they can get, right now I have 1, 2, I think Tangier is one of them. Yeah. I have 1, 2, 3 of the ports, which is the minimum to get any points for. So I could just play this, and I get a victory point on a 50% and a card otherwise, which isn't terrible, but there's a lot of victory points if I can go up to 5 of the ports. And gaining 2 more ports is certainly within my reach. And again, like I said with the Beltranejos, I may not want to be, like, what I want to be doing with them, I think, is actually capture a lot of Castilian land and lose hard while that's the case. That is the best way to get a lot of victory points. And that actually takes some effort to do. Right now, my big army is sitting back here, but I don't think I can face the Grand Captain, which, by the way, I'm reading the rules too, so it's quite possible El Gran Capitan, whatever the Europa Simulations game. I'm really trying to clear out those so that I can stow them all at once, knowing that I'm not leaving anything behind, which has been a constant problem of mine. But anyway, I've got a hard choice with them. Like, you know, do I want to? It's the same choice as always, but yeah, it's it's a tough one in this case. I also have my new home card, which again I haven't looked up whether or not. For the Spaniards, I don't remember. They have a lot of combat in their hand. And I can start looking up, you know, what kind of peace conditions Portugal and Spain have to reach and whatnot at this point. How much do I mind that? You know, other than the fact that it's just sort of baked into the regular rules and not like, I don't know, special events that are occurring right now. It's like everything's just treated as rules, even though, and that's kind of the problem, is the events are on the cards. The game has too much information on the events for the cards, and some of the events are in play at the beginning of the game and are not on cards. They're just baked into the rules, like, you know, for turns 1 through 3, these rules take effect. And it's just, there's nothing wrong with doing that normally. It's just there's such a heavy burden in this across the board. For some reason I put this down as Portuguese. Maybe it flipped. I don't know. It shouldn't be. Or was it? Yeah, it was because Alfonso's the one who captured it, but he had Beltranejos units with him, so I think he can claim that for the Beltranejos. I haven't had anybody declare war normally, and this is where the problem is. For Portugal to declare war on the North Africans only costs 1 point, but that, I don't have anything in my warehouse, and that essentially would mean giving up a card, the least of which is a 3-point card, to you know, to take that step. That feels kind of painful. Now, I could try to nudge the Muslims into declaring war in the sense of making it seem like I want peace, but am unwilling to deal. and I can play that out. I'm really kind of feeling pressed and need to go down and play raid rather than actually do anything. There's just so much I have to fucking look up to make the decisions at this point, right? It's kind of like the economic phase in EU, but I have to kind of pre-plan all the cards that I'm going to play, all the effects I'm going to do, what I'm going to chase after and everything in a thinking in a way that's very, very different, right? I'm not just assigning my economy and saying, yeah, I'm going to devote this much, I'm going to, first of all, in EU, the economic things you do happen during the planning phase. So like if I'm settling a colony, it happens then. If I'm building merchants, it happens then, right? But secondly, it's really just an allocation. I look and I can say, okay, I know what I want to do most. Here, I know what I would do most if I had all the rules in my head, right? And by all the rules in my head, I mean not just what's in the game, but what's in my hand of cards for the turn. If I had that completely memorized and understood, as well as all the special rules that are in play at any given time. So, yeah, that's a little problematic. And maybe also what might be better done on another turn because there are special rules for the next turn or whatever. But what I do know is that there's a potential big bonus if I could expand my ownership in North Africa, but I don't think I want to press it. The problem is I don't get shit for my Beltranejos, except that I have points on here that are quite inflated because I'm holding those things. But essentially, I can lock them in by losing the Beltranejos while they're doing well, if they work the same as the Catalans do. Which, again, more shit to look up. I think they do. And a lot of what I'm doing here is just saying, you know what? Let the chips fall where they may. I'm not going to look it up. Here it is, Friday, early-ish afternoon. Slept a lot. But I've been having headaches, part of it, or weird pain in one of my eyes that feels like pressure there. Anyway, starting to study, the special rules and everything. This is a big turn. I can't find a good reason for the Portuguese to keep supporting the Beltranejos. This is the first turn where I could do the piece of Alcaçovas. I don't see a hell of a lot of reason for Spain not to accept it. They kind of both want the Beltranejos to fall, and I think the negotiations are along those lines. So I think that's going to pass, which puts it even more, or it makes things even more attractive for the Portuguese to declare war on the North Africans. The problem, of course, is they're going to waste some resources on it. You feel like, it should only cost me one. At the same time, Portugal and France are committing to an alliance and kind of asking why did we not continue it last turn? We had no real reason, but as long as this is still there, of course, that's not going to make any difference, but it's okay. It takes a weight off of either of their minds. Neither one's really interfering with the other, so it's not that big a deal. But I feel like Portugal has enough of a hand to concentrate on both their exploration side of things and on the North Africans. North Africa is not really willing to start the war. And Portugal was kind of hoping to tempt them into it, but they've got no real reason for it. And in fact, is willing to offer an alliance, which to the Portuguese is all the more reason to be desiring a victory. Had this stayed, or had I left this as Portuguese, although I think I could have made it Beltranejos, and that's why I reversed it, that would have kind of made things a little bit uglier, because it would leave this in Portuguese hands as a victory point city and make it much, not as a victory point city, but as a location that the Portuguese would kind of have to just surrender to Castile. But if I can lose it along with losing the Beltranejos as a whole, it's kind of cool. Now, I am going to lose the Joanna card. That's what I lose with the piece of Beltranejos, I think. Although maybe, I lose it when they surrender, I believe. But again, even though I'm looking through these special rules, it takes a while to start to get all the answers of all the effects of what you're getting. And yeah, again, EU has the same kind of issues there, where you have to cross-reference, different events or different special rules to look at things. It's just, I walk into a CDG with a different expectation to some extent, and it is helping me a lot in terms of enjoying this. France can't do the Peace of Barcelona. They kind of unilaterally do that, if I recall correctly. Like I just read that, or the Treaty of Barcelona. Either by extending an impulse or in their spring deployment, neither of which really feels terribly vital to me. Certainly the spring deployment one doesn't change the state of war, so it's kind of useless. Gives up some cards, gets me the event out of the way. I don't have other important cards like Etaples or Senless, which I think are both cards. Somebody else may have them, and I may be being slowed down because two of them are out there, but I don't know. Nobody's deigned to show me that they have them, so I'm just like, screw it, I'll keep going. I run into weird things like the dynastic inheritance, which is repeated on both of, if I can find it. I don't know where the fuck it is. The dynastic inheritance rights on Naples and Roussillon, which are in Aragon, but I think they're also in France. Worded it again. Yeah, up here. The way they're worded, at the mandatory event, the death of Ferrante fine, they say something, if you have these spaces, France gains a victory point. Whenever France controls both spaces in Roussillon, they gain a bonus victory point. That kind of wording in the rules is kind of ambiguous. The same kind of wording is used with like the Lord of Italy, which accumulates over turns. Whereas this, and the only reason I was able to find it out for sure, is there's only one counter, which is the Roussillon counter, to cover this victory point thing. And it covers both countries. Both countries get a point for it. Similarly, with Anfa, although I think that's like gains of victory point. So whenever France controls both, they gain a bonus victory point. Sounds to me like they're gaining the point as a continual stream. Sort of. Except it doesn't tell you when it happens. It's whenever. And obviously, you can't be gaining a continuous stream in infinitesimal slices of time or whatever. So if it had said at the end of a turn or something, it would indicate, it would be clearer in the other direction. But anyway, that's the kind of struggle I have with the way this handles things. There is an extra victory point for France or Spain to own both of these, along with the keys and whatnot, and strategic spaces and everything. Anyway, I think I'm running down at the end of what diplomacy is going to happen, I'm going to handle Beltranejos and this alliance. And I think that's it. Declarations of war happens after the diplomacy phase, so you don't have to pulse those in with your declarations. The diplomacy is really declarations between multiple players. Let's see what the order is here. So Portugal will be declaring the alliance with France and the Peace of Beltranejos, and then Spain has to decide what they're doing about it. Now, they probably will not be screwed in their mind by the alliance with France. But I am going to roll a die, and on a 1, they're going to refuse the Peace of Beltranejos based on that alliance. Just as a, what? Because otherwise, to me, it looks good for both sides. But I like to roll a die for alliances whenever possible, and I feel like that is a possible little thing. So then I'm going to jump in, and we have an alliance then between Portugal and France, and we have the Beltranejos Peace of Alcaçovas, which I'll come back to, or whatever it is. Alcaçovas. God, I'm so bad. I'll go over what happened. But among other things, there's no longer an alliance between the Beltranejos and the Portuguese. One of the obnoxious things. There's a whole bunch of counters that apply to this. One of which is the Alcaçovas' special conditions, which last for 2 turns, and that replaces the war marker. Fine. The next one I need to find is the war at sea marker, and I don't know where it is. I've been looking for it. Here's another one of these of this. There we go. I don't know what happens where yet, but whatever. You know? But yeah, somewhere in here there's got to be a war at sea marker, and I've been pawing through the Portuguese looking for it and whatnot. It's just one of the problems with resorting to all these special reminder markers. Now again, I don't know what you can do to fix that. It just feels like some of the inherent choices, you know, to follow that here I stand model are what is just causing this kind of problem. It works fine in here I stand. There aren't tons of little counters for each country. All different. And again, I'm going to compare what we see in EU to this, and maybe also in EU POP. EU POP uses a very similar mechanism in terms of giving you resources to keep track of game state and everything. And it's equally problematic. There's just too much shit. Too much information to handle that way. What does EU do? EU does less. Okay? It gives you an event book. And it gives you a sheet of paper where you mark off numbers of events, but it actually doesn't even really hit a great deal of information about what the events are. So what do you resort to? You resort to keeping a log and writing everything down. Which means, since you're already used to writing stuff down on the spreadsheets and everything like that, it's really not that big a stretch to do this, because the game doesn't provide you with any kind of materials to help you. And that sort of more, I don't know, more cumbersome approach actually helps me to remember what's happened and what hasn't. Because I have to actually write down something, you know, what effects are in play, etc. And I keep a log turn to turn of all the big things that I have to pay attention to. I can't say that that is the best choice. A good choice might actually be what I saw recently in Clash of Sovereigns, which is sort of a player aid of events and effects listed on it that you can mark things off on. it's got its own problems. It doesn't give enough information. It just gives the name of the event, so you have to go flush back into the rules. There's no reminder sheet or anything. But that might be the best move here, is just a list of all the things that can happen in the game, where you check them off as they do, and they have a list of the effects in a summarized form, kind of like this. And maybe that's present in some of the player aids that are out there. It's not given to you within the game, though. It would, you know, again, it feels to me that, like, playtesting, you know, honestly, other people have a better way of handling massive amounts of game state on counters and whatever. I know that than I do. Like, their brain is able to deal with it better. I have a real problem there. And so, you know, maybe this is a suitable example for the people who can enjoy this game in that sort of weird space of CDG with way too much overload. And I would say it's the same kind of game space as the EU Pop was in a lot of ways. Although, I don't know. Anyway, I have less desire. Like, that game, the appeal to me is that game doesn't feel complete enough yet, because it doesn't have pieces to cover all the powers that are represented. And it doesn't have scenarios to cover, like, 8 players and stuff like that. I feel like there's room for an expansion for EU Pop. And I also feel like there's certain, like, changes to the rules that would help it. Here, I'm not getting a grasp of, oh my God, this needs to change or whatever. I feel like there's stuff that's wrong in EU Pop, and that makes me desire to play it more, to, like, fix it, right? And that's kind of what drove me to a lot of the AWE games, is that I really feel like I want to tinker with them a little bit, like they're not getting it right. I don't know that this is or not. It's actually not giving me a good enough narrative because of the way it's demonstrated, whereas I felt like EU Pop was giving me a slightly better one. I mean, I've pawed through everything, I think. I don't know, and I'm not finding it. I know it exists. It says it exists here, and I kind of remember seeing it. But I did run into this Spanish forts counter, which gives a victory point for Spanish forts. No fucking clue what it refers to. I look in the Spanish rules, and I don't see a picture of that. Maybe it's in Aragon. And I didn't see anything that talks about it. I guess it's a card. I mean, so much of the game is like, I wonder what this component has to do with. And they're tiny little counters. There's not really room for a rules reference, but one is fucking necessary, right? Like, or something. I remember there being something about this. I got no idea what it is. It's gone from my head. And I had no fucking idea where to look for the war at sea marker. I just don't know where I've put it. There's so goddamn many little tiny markers, some of which there's no explanation for in the rule book where you'll think there would be. This is just fucking frustrating. 5 minutes or so looking. I don't know what, you know, another couple minutes at most. But anyway, I find another counter. What the fuck? Sagras played. Well, didn't I do this? Doesn't tell me to pick up that counter on the card and do anything with it. But it's the only thing that it can refer to. So I'll put this over here somewhere to remind me. I don't know what it matters. Like, it's like just a reminder on the card. But yeah, I'm actually picking up each counter and looking on the back of them to see if they contain this. I don't think they will. Most do not have that kind of thing. Although I did find that when I need the unrest, I got to try to remember they're on the back of the fortresses. Indeed, this tactic works out. Just a moment later, I get to the Tortosalis enforced counter, which I have in a pile of Tortosalis counters. I've pawed through these already to see, but on the other side is the War at Sea. And now I got to try to remember what I'm up to, right? Like, first of all, EU pop, much better in terms of course, you know, they're essentially unlimited to how many components they could place because they just put a price on something and, you know, figured out what they wanted and put the price based on that. But here, GMT probably is a little bit stricter than a Kickstarter fan game or whatever, and has a harder time, you know, justifying printing another counter sheet or whatever. So it does make sense that it would be double printed, but the EU solution is so much easier because I know there aren't a ton of these counters. Counters are generally, you know, of a type, right, in that game. There isn't a lot of, in fact, I'm having trouble thinking of anything where there's a single counter to indicate something has happened. I don't think there's a single case of that. So any place where you're trying to indicate a state existing or whatever, you have to write it down, and you just know that. So right away you go down to writing it down. It's a pain in the ass, mechanically complicated, but honestly, less so than fucking hunting for the counter is. Now, obviously, you get used to this game, it becomes, you might remember where those counters are or whatever. But I don't think I'll get used to it, because I don't think I'll come back to it. Okay, so let's go over this page of rules again, and what happens because of it. We are allowed to agree to have the peace at this point. The first thing is Portugal and Beltranejos are no longer allies. The Portuguese can play combat and response cards on behalf of either power, displace all Portuguese units in Beltranejos spaces, vice versa. There aren't any. Okay. The normal state of war between Portugal and Spain ends. Peace lasts for this turn and one additional turn, during which they can't go to war. I've got this counter for that, and then I've got the War at Sea. We'll get to that in a moment. It'll flip over next turn and then expire. A state of war still exists between Portugal and Spain at sea. Place War at Sea markers on the alliance and war table. Their naval squadrons intercept each other normally. Neither power can initiate piracy on the other. Yeah, I forgot you can go to piracy against people you're at war with. This will expire when the obligation to keep peace has expired. Spain and Portugal may not ally as long as war at sea is there. Castile can no longer establish settlements in zones 1 and 2. That's some more busyness on the map. No biggie. Although they can navigate into these zones to explore and pirate. As a reminder, put the no settlements, Alcaçovas, or, yeah. Portugal can no longer enter land spaces in the Canary Islands. Any spaces it controls are switched over. You use this marker for that. 3 victory points to Portugal. Great. But there's more. Spanish player selects a card from his hand and gives it immediately to the Portuguese as war reparations. If they have no cards, Portugal gets one from the deck. Well, Spain's worst card is the one Portugal wants the most, and they're just going to give it to them. Even though Portugal's in the lead in the game, anything else is like they really like their other cards. The combat cards especially are useful. I could give a combat card instead, couldn't I? Because giving up this to Portugal is just too much, I think. Arquebussers, a whole bunch of extra dice. That's really useful. See, the problem is I'm at war with... yeah, I'm going to give them this. I'm still at war with France, and nothing has been done to fix that. So I'm worried about them. I'm not that worried about the Beltranejos because, as the Portuguese pointed out, they want them wiped out too. So this is sort of my best choice in terms of my own position. It is probably helping a player who's in the lead too much, but whatever. I don't know how much it's going to help him. Albuquerque. Not a whole hell of a lot. It doesn't give me the Albuquerque counter or anything like that. And it doesn't give me, I think there's a counter for him. It doesn't give me the important thing, the Vasco da Gama. If it was Vasco da Gama, I would be very worried, right? But I think I just I don't know how I get him. No clue. I'm assuming a card. Or something. The Overseas Expeditions card or something like that. Okay, let's keep going. They trade spaces. Oh, here's the big one. A marriage between Isabel and the daughter and Alfonso of Portugal is immediately arranged and automatically successful. So I bumped that up. Still got Manuel kicking around. He's a possible substitute if there's a death, which there will be. If either of them died previously, this opportunity is lost. They can't try to use it for anything else. And they switch territories, like I said. If it was signed by diplomatic, remove the card from the deck. I don't want to do that. I'll do it when it's reshuffle time. I don't want to paw through the deck, learn it all, have to reshuffle, basically. If somebody had it in hand, it would indeed be discarded and replaced. This changes the Beltranejos. Their units can only move, recruit, and assault when their home card is played as an event. And this home card can no longer be used as CPs. It can, however, be played to support a headline event. This home card play can be extended with resources, and those extra CPs can be dedicated to moves from the Beltranejos. But remember, you're so penalized in terms of doing the same kind of actions with an extension that it's probably not going to be the place. But Beltranejos can assault directly upon entering a fortified space without having to lay siege beforehand. If you extend a resource, you can repeat an assault action in a single space you've assaulted with the play of the home card. And the home card can be played in addition to the other two Portuguese home cards. So this was a good turn to do it because I would have been limited to 2 home cards otherwise. I'm going to have to look for who has the right to play all 3. I know the Spaniards never do. I think the Muslims may. The peace is broken if Portugal and Spain go to war at any time after the mandatory peace ends. If this occurs and the Treaty of Tordesillas has not been played, it'll cancel it. And then we go on to that. Still haven't made it through the diplomacy, right? But I think this is the edge of it, except I've got one more corresponding thing that I have to go look up, which is what happens because of this marriage. I think something does, but I'm not sure. I know that there's a desire to isolate. I have made a marriage between Portugal and Spain, so I should get a little Portuguese marker up there. I know that much. Once I get all 3 of those, I get the isolate France, but I don't know what else happens. I got to swap batteries and go look that shit up. One other thing. These are the markers. No. What are these? I got these markers for Alcaçovas, which appear to be... I know what they are. If they control each other's powers, they get victory points for them. Okay. Perfect. And nobody's giving anything away to the other player. Yeah, I was like, wow, that thing's not pictured anywhere. Start giving me pictures, and I expect them everywhere. Okay? All right. Let me go look up the marriages. Where do I expect those to be? I expect those to be in the Castilian home country rules. They're not. Obviously, they're not going to be in Aragon or anywhere else. So I flipped to the index, And there's a whole section on them. Oh, look, a special rule section that is an entire section of rules, like the same level as the major powers rules, for something that really is just part of the Spanish player. Fuck. Well, at least it was easy to find. I skimmed through those, not much happens. This is a way to just automatically get the marriage without having to deal with a dowry. Interestingly enough, the dowry doesn't give anything. So Spain is going to pay CPs to arrange a marriage, possibly with Portugal, otherwise with an NPC. Portugal doesn't get the dowry in any sense of the word. Now, dowries are fucked up anyway, right? Because if we're talking about a marriage that doesn't result in an heir, the dowry essentially reverts back. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. But presumably you're giving land and goods and monies and whatnot to support the female in a dowry, usually. Not all. There's one male heir whom you have to pay off. You know, you have to put an expenditure into, which technically wouldn't be a dowry. So it's like, you know, it's costs of diplomatic effort and whatnot, more than a dowry, I would say. Although the dowry could be quite a major expenditure. I don't have to worry about any of the rules for resolution, etc. So I come down here, Alcaçovas peace wedding bonus, and I see, oh look, France isolated counter is there. That's not the right thing. The Spaniards just got a successful wedding marker though, and recorded that victory point. And that, I think, is the end of the negotiation segment, which will put us to the ransom. There aren't any. The war segment, Portugal is going to declare war. Not happy about the cost of the card, but I don't really want to play this. And that's a 3-point card, which is as low as it gets for me. So I'm going to play that in order to declare war on North Africa. And once again, and that's about all I can take. I don't think anybody else is doing any declarations of war. I wasn't really able to think too hard because I'm so busy. Like, I'm not able to think about strategy, nor the narrative, nor anything else, because I'm so busy looking up rules or looking for counters or shit like that, or trying to parse a card's rules specifically, or anything else. It's very, very hard. And that makes the diplomacy phase harder because I don't have a picture of what is going on in the game, right? That's part of why I had to go away and didn't do the diplomacy last night. The structure of this game is just such that it makes it so that you don't do the kind of grand so that you're not engaged in the kind of grand strategic thinking that you should be. Now, that is a flaw to me in all these pulsed games, in all the CDGs. You're kind of focused more on, hey, what can I get out of this card? What can I squeeze out of it? Whatever. But in a game which has a detailed, you know, has its specific diplomacy phase, the diplomacy phase can be a moment where you step back and reflect on the strategic impulses the same way as the economy phase where you're filling out your spreadsheet in EU is. The problem is, in order to get a grasp on what the fuck's going on, you have to look up so much shit that it kind of defeats the purpose. So I felt like in Here I Stand, I didn't have to go look up a hell of a lot of shit very quickly I was getting an idea of what I want to do. And I have some vague ideas, right, already. I know that the Spaniards want to take the Beltranejos out. The Portuguese are kind of in favor of that. The Portuguese want to get this coast. France wants to be able to do something that can help them, you know. Like, the only thing I can figure out that really helps me is playing with these, because everything else is kind of out of reach. But that may be the technical, you know, that may just be the circumstances that they face. The Muslims, well, they're not happy with what they just saw, because if the Beltranejos fall, then Granada's next. Trying to put the diplomacy out of mind, and thought I was coming up here to do another big task, the headline event, where you have to read through all your cards and make plans based on all the special rules and everything else for the turn. Something that feels more cumbersome to me than filling out the spreadsheet is, even though obviously mechanically it's not, the EU spreadsheet is something I'm just more used to, whereas facing a new, you know, handful of 6 to 10 cards, each of which contains its own rules, well, some of them I can just buzz away. And trying to make my strategy based on that hand of cards is not something I'm very used to. It's not something, you know, for all the CDGs I played, I still am just not well linked to that decision making in the way that I am, say, almost immediately in EU. Even in that first game where I didn't know what the fuck was going on and everything, I could very easily say, okay, I want to expend my money here, here, here. Oh, do I have enough for the army I need? Yeah, probably. In general, you had excess money in EU, right? Whereas here, in general, you have less cards than what you want to do everywhere. But the excess money isn't enough, okay? Like, there's plenty more, like, you could always use tons more money, but the point is, once you kind of come to a decision as to what you're trying to do, you cut back on what your military is going to do, because you want that engine to build up more than you want, you know, to be able to spend essentially 100 money each turn, each impulse in the combat phase. You might have 100 that you're willing to spend once, but in general, yeah, you might find yourself shafting the military side of things. At least I did, almost intrinsically. Just as I do here, if I have something that I feel like it's going to improve my country overall, although honestly the card play situation has me more focused on the military. Because they tend to be littler costs to make. I can move a piece for one point on the CP, whereas it cost me $10 in EU to move a unit, right? Or $100 to move a whole bunch of units. Or does it cost me 30 to move a unit? I don't remember. $10 maybe if I just want to move, like, stuff on the off-board, you know, exploration and stuff, and maybe 30 for a single unit. But anyway, like, the military cost in EU is very, very high compared to settlements and whatnot. Although you have to do all kind of other stuff to get your settlements and whatnot working. But yeah, military feels incredibly cheap in comparison here. And also, I can move a lot of units a little bit, which is something I cannot do in EU without spending a lot of money. About an hour before I got to do raid and then go dancing and whatnot. Kind of pretty sunlight coming through here. Nice dark skies. It's going to rain again tonight, but it may be dry for my walk over. I'm trying to figure out the headline event, and it's really a pain. Because remember, I'm doing Spain right now, for whatever reason, doing them first. they had a trouble finding a card they wanted to give away, right? They get to choose. Part of it is these 2 combat cards are really useful. They're also only 2-point cards. Can't use them as headline event. Don't want to use them as backers for a big event. Unexpected Reinforcements, nice card. Gives me a bunch of CP of units. This might be what I use as my backer, because I really like this card for combat again, to prepare me, weaken an enemy stack before I hit it. My home cards, yeah, they're appealing too. So I'm probably going to break down between one of these 4 as my headline event. But I'm just at this point where I have to pick a good card for my backer, because all I have is good cards for my headline event. It's a hard decision point in the game. Getting better at doing these. France had an interesting one. They're going to do the Power of the Crown, add some forces, and some loyalty. But they have a card that they get a bonus by playing it as a headline as the headline back, or 5-point. It has no event on it. Yeah, it's a big 6-point card, but that victory point feels really appealing, you know, with like whatever marginal loss I have. Everyone actually played pretty big. The Muslims are going to get the last place one and not be able to get their home card off, because they played only a 3. 3 is usually safe for them, because they go first under all other circumstances. I was kind of thinking, their hand of cards, it feels like it's always a little small. They don't have extra resources to give them cards easily. Yeah, these might give them a little bit, but they didn't get anything, you know, they didn't get any backup CPs or anything like that from it. I feel like they're the weakest of the powers in terms of what they can do, their capabilities card-wise. We'll see if that improves, you know, when they get this or whatever. But right now it does not feel very powerful. Portuguese continuing with their exploration. This Kingdom Tribute allows me to borrow cards off of next turn, sort of. It gives me two cards for out of the deck, giving me a bigger hand this turn. Then I get a -1 on my player card as a reminder that for next turn I won't get all my cards. That's going to be kind of a pain, like remembering to remove it and all kind of shit like that. Like I've got a +1 card over here that's just floating around because of Rus alone. And these kind of undefined things that don't have a specific counter, and I know I complain about the specific counter thing, but the ones that don't have a specific counter, it's like, yeah, why is that there? What's up with that? And I kind of feel like I have to keep this card floating around. Here's the thing, that -1 card marker matters when, you know, at exactly the time when I've just shuffled this back in. So it's like, there really should be things like -1 card 1 turn or something like that. I don't know. But I don't know how many of these type of cards there are. If you draw 3 cards, you get a lot of unrest, which I don't really want. And then you like discard a card of your choice from your hand and draw a resource from the pool. It's like you're not really getting 3 full cards. You're getting 2 cards and an extension, but you get a discard. I've got a pretty good hand. If I draw 2 good cards or 3 good cards, I won't have anything to discard. It just doesn't feel like a good choice with the unrest and everything. But yeah, so we're going to get the victory point over there. Portugal gets the shot at a victory point, and the Muslims get to play with the diplomacy table. It's not as useful as I thought it would be because I have a whole shit ton of troops in Paris. Kind of hoping, I guess, to take Metz. I don't know. Anyway, extra troops are useful, so what the hell. Going to the headline events phase. Where is this? I need to to paw back through this because I don't know what the die roll is for the second place thing. The rest of it I kind of have memorized. I didn't know what the die roll is. It's a 5. He's played their exploration. And I think you're supposed to keep the School of Sagres out here if it's while it's active, which is sort of the Sagres plate. I don't know why you need that, but helps remind you of the event, of the effects of it. I was aware it was played because it's in the box and I can pull it out, you know, but yeah, maybe whatever. I don't know. But anyway, for my exploration turn, I ended up moving my fleet out here. That could be intercepted, but the Muslims are not happy about like their odds of being able to fight against that. I think that's supposed to be Albuquerque there. I don't know. And I set sail with a bunch of nous that I get from that and ended up building 3 new settlements in areas I already explored. Sail in, land, sail in, land. I actually think I'll do this one, right? Because I got to start him here. No, he sails out and lands, yeah. Okay. For whatever it's worth, I'm using up a lot of settlement capability here, which I don't really like, but I'm not allowed to expand into anywhere else until the overseas voyages. We'll see, you know. I'm not really thrilled with what I'm looking at. Was my Albuquerque a better? I have the Master of the Atlantic, which is not there. Albuquerque, Lion of the Seas. Portugal places a now in the built nows or in a settlement. Portugal then takes 2 naval moves. So I have another opportunity to expand if I desire to. Without Tordesillas in place, I could actually be exploring for the New World. Not quite sure. I'll have to look up Tordesillas if I'm thinking about that in terms of whether I want to try doing that, because it's got its disadvantages. It's further away and shit like that, so it's like kind of painful to do. But and I don't know if I lose those settlements after Tordesillas is kind of the issue. Of course, I might not want Tordesillas, but I suspect I do. But some sort of expansion into here would be of value. I got exploration rolls on that I think I was able to make. I should do that. Not quite sure what my nouses were. I think I probably had the lousy one in here, which means I only took 1 roll on this at the +2. And I did not get it, so too bad. Victory points would be nice. France and Portugal running away with victory points. I don't know if they're doing well in the game, though, right? It's hard to tell, because, you know, if Portugal feels like they are. They feel like they're doing some cool shit. France, I feel so, like, hemmed in, but, you know, I pushed Alençon forward. Right? No, I pushed someone forward. Yeah, I pushed Alençon forward and got my victory point for that with his action. And I guess that puts me to the Spaniards who... we got the victory point for the headline event. We rolled the 5. Didn't have to take a penalty. You know, I don't know if you're allowed to fuck around with your own people. Basically, these 2 sides are allied. I could have... If they were not owned by the same player, I could definitely loan squadrons. Naval squadrons may be lent by players controlled by 1 major power in order to move squadrons to a control port of the receiving power. Yeah. Yeah, so I think I could have, and I will do this, look for a loaned marker. And before the Portuguese got to do what they wanted to do, I would have been able to send this out with a loaned marker on it, which kind of evens things out a little bit more. Right now I'm on the troop deployments. The naval deployments, only the Portuguese got to do it. They could have sent a ship out here, but I want to keep my power. I want to be strong in the Navy because otherwise I might be at risk. But we might come to a naval battle anyhow. What am I doing? What am I doing? Troop deployments. I am doing the Muslim. They're positioning themselves for the attack on Gibraltar, which is not as valuable as if it was before, if it happens before the Mully Hassan, who's still in charge, but is no longer a military leader. I got Tom Bombadil instead for that. And I moved Ibn Yahya up there. And we're running out of battery, so I should swap. I had to look up Beltranejo's surrender rules because I want to see, hey, how do the victory points happen? Yeah, they don't happen the way I expected. They're temporary surrenders if they lose all keys or something like that, which means I don't really want to do that because it's only temporary. The permanent surrender is if they don't control any key or strategic home spaces, but it doesn't look like I get any victory points for that. So I don't know. I probably want to face... I don't really want to face the Grand Captain. That's the problem. And Spain does not have a lot of troops on the board right now. Now I have reinforcement cards that I can help Isabella with to help her start conquering those forts. If it's of value, again, Beltranejo's permanent surrender is no key or strategic spaces. There are none up here. That area I can just let be a problem. The one reason it might not want to is I want to take that, but because otherwise I don't get my Mestas points. But I'm not really in a position to do anything about that right now. The Grand Captain's moving down to counter that for whatever value that is. And again, the order of play feels like it's kind of a balancing factor, right? But I don't know if it's a good balancing factor. In this case, for troop deployment, the best thing is to deploy last, it feels like, which again hurts the Muslims, helps the French. Is in this annoyingly painful position. Tremoille alone does not have the troops to face Ferdinand up here, but I have the forces under Charles and Albert, and I really should have built the troops with them. I didn't realize I had another leader there. I think I would have built these troops up here. I have the troops under them to maybe take Metz. Maybe, but that's a real crapshoot. I think I'm better off shifting down either into Perpignan, and I think I'm only allowed to shift one leader's worth of troops, right? A formation, that's a little different than I thought. A formation could be a double leader formation, so I could bring my entire army down there, because it's not doing me any good anywhere else anymore. Like, if I do bring it down, it's not doing me any fucking good. So let's look at that. How is that worded? Where is it? We got restrictions here, troop deployment. Single formation. Now they have this. The number of land units in this formation is limited by the command rating of any army leaders present. Okay, so I think I can combine this. All right. Yeah, Charles feeling like Ferdinand has moved up into too threatening a position. I'm going to try to force Castile, or Aragon actually, into a peace. by beating them up. And that maybe I get points for Barcelona. I don't think so. I think I only get it while the Catalan revolt is going on or whatever. Can't really remember much of the game. Again, it's way too much on special rules. That's going to get me to the action phase. I think it's time for me to stop for the day. And I'll probably be back on Sunday at the earliest. It is indeed Sunday around midday. And yeah, the stressors are increasing on me. But let's get started and I guess play some cards. I'm looking at the mess of things here, which is starting to feel kind of like a foreign war would, right? Just in terms of like there's a whole bunch of pieces floating around over what looks like a card. Don't want to get too confused by that. The Turks got this weird Italian Renaissance card. Remember, if they had a resource, the way I'm ruling it, they can extend the first impulse, which is 2 CPs of action. For that, I was able to move into place to siege. What's important about that is I'm able to actually resolve the siege in this same activity sequence because it's going to start a new impulse at the end of it. Now I draw a card from the deck and play any card in my hand as that brand new impulse. And after that's complete, then France gets to play around and get themselves some victory points. What do I get for them? I don't think those are dead. I think those are guys they're due as reinforcements. I could actually build a now at this point, because I think turn 3 is when everything opens up. Might not be a bad choice. But yeah, 2 CP of action and 2 naval moves. I could do some exploration. One of the CPs could be my siege, right? I think a siege only costs 1. Yeah. That doesn't work for me. So I've got 2 CP of naval actions. I could come out and fight. Well, no. 2 CP of actions. I would need to do the siege with one of them. So I don't know. I'm allowed to use one of these other cards. Sea Fog can make an interception fail, so I could slip out and do some piracy or something. Or I could avoid a naval battle. I like these mercenary militias. That's a nice card. I'm allowed to hold 2 cards. Those aren't terrible. Sea Dog, that's what I just drew. This is what I already played, but I have to keep it in play, available for me to look at the French rules when this is over. Man, I'm not thrilled with any of these. Like, I want to use these for their response capability. I need points. I just don't have a lot of actions. We'll hope for the best with the siege, I guess, and try to figure out what to do with that extra point. Phew. All right, that was fatiguing. Okay, so I used one of my 2 naval actions to move out into here. That's fine. I could actually continue into the port now, which maybe I do. Because there's no great advantage to defending in a port, is there? I don't know. 1 die for each battle rating from highest rated leader. 1 point of defender if it's in a port of Ragusa. Yeah, I think they're about the same. So I may want to follow up. Sorry, I didn't use my second naval move. But yeah, I did the Sea Dogs, the 2 CPs. The first was a battle for the siege here. That did not work well. I think I lost a unit. Basically, one of the problems is I have Cav with me. I could have converted it, but I'm like, maybe I'll get lucky. I don't know. Then I sailed out, and I won the naval battle without any cards being played. I think I'm going to follow up into here to fight another naval battle, because I have the numerical advantage at this point. The French exchanged 3 of their points off people they've already collected their victory points from in order to get another victory point up there. But yeah, let me do another battle there, because their first battle went very, very well. And now it's likely to go even better. Now, we were successful. We lost 1 Corsair in the follow-up battle. We had equal dice in that first battle, which is, you know, it was kind of a crapshoot, especially since we didn't have a card that would help us in an actual battle. We have to retreat back into the Alboran Sea. We didn't have, you know, the points for piracy, which wouldn't be a naval move. It's initiate piracy, and I wouldn't have had the points for that. Not and do the siege. That was kind of my whole problem, is the 2 CPs was enough to do a siege, and then like I moved some forces out of here. But now we're in the Alboran Sea. We've destroyed the Portuguese Navy, which is a big move. That makes any ports a little bit more vulnerable to siege. I'm going over to the Portuguese turn, but honestly, I'm wiped out by the rules lookups I had to do to fight a naval battle. I like to do anything in this game, basically. Hey, Portugal's decision is to do the worst thing that they can, which is to play a plague on the North Africans here. Now, why is that so bad? Well, luckily there's a rules reference in here. If they move out of there during the movement phase, out of any of the 3 spaces, first of all, nothing can move into those spaces. If they move out of those spaces, and I assume this will also work with interception. I don't know if there's a restriction. No unit may enter a space. Each land or naval unit that attempts to move out of a space, either in spring or action phases, doesn't seem to be... I don't think it's required to be movement. I think interception would allow it. Has to roll a die. On 1 through 3, they're eliminated for each unit, and you roll each unit separately. And also for leaders, which greatly reduces the capability of that unit. Now, if the Muslims just sit there, you would think that would be bad too. They do have to make an attrition roll in that case, but I think only on 1s is it destroyed. If I look at 18.5, which I just looked up, but which is over in the winter phase. For each roll of 1, eliminate a unit of your choice, and leaders also are 1s. Yeah. So it's safer. It's a big 6-point card to waste on, you know, not getting any actions. It's safer to stay where I am. But on the other hand, staying where I am may mean losing the North African coast. Spain is also dicky to the Muslims. Andalusian nobles seize Alhama. Alhama is now controlled by Castile, who placed a control marker for Castilian militia in the space. It killed off half the Nasrid troops that were there, pushed them away, getting them into a divided position. They could have retreated back on the Gibraltar area, but I don't really want to do that. I want to keep, I wanted to get control of these forces under the leader. But it does split my forces up, sort of. I don't know. I don't think I'm at war with the Beltranejos. I'm not sure. Not sure what the situation is with them. Like, can I interfere with them? Don't know. But that ended up being a key and going over, getting the Spanish another victory point. What's this? Oh boy. So I have to wipe out the Nasrid in the next couple turns. I did get around to starting to play the French, but I'm like, that was a really bad idea. It's me not paying attention to the game board because of walking away and whatnot. I do not want to do that. There's a far more important thing for me to do, which is to deal with the French army on my border. And I've got a nasty for that, actually, which is a supply shortage. And really, like, as soon as I started switching turns, I'm like, yeah, that's not a good idea. Single stack of land units loses half round down of its units chosen by the owner. If you play this card as an event, you may not extend your impulses with a resource. I'm going to check to see if the French have anything that'll cancel an event. You know, they can cancel the Tanto Monta, but I don't think they do. That's a huge stack. 2 leaders, something like 15 strength points there. Really nasty. French play the Papal Bull to soften up Ferdinand's stack. Pull the troops from Tremoy down. I actually don't need him with them, so I'm not gonna move the leader. I can move 4 strength points as a force, and then I move in to attack. Now this can't be a siege unless Ferdinand gets away or something. I'm going to try to figure out what kind of cards might be played, but Papal Bull was cool because it allowed me to pull a card out of the Spanish pile. It's the one they seized, the big, I think. I don't know. Was there another no event that got played? Yeah, there was another one that got played. Yeah, it was, you know, there's a lot of points. Not necessarily what I'm looking for. I was looking to, you know, deplete if they have a battle card or something like that, but Ferdinand had a handful of surprises for the French. First of all, he was able to cancel out their cav charge with arquebusiers, which also gave him 3 extra dice of hits. I get 2 Spaniards back, actually. I didn't read everything that this did me. Their 4s don't hit. And they managed to get a couple of those. That's the wrong kind of Spaniard. Let's put this in here. Okay, that. We make change again. A lot of this game is fiddling with the counters, making change. Which means that the French lost the battle. I also did a surprise attack which allowed the Spaniards to shoot first before the French dice are calculated. So between those two, I did a lot of nastiness to the French. The French still have a couple of points left. I think they're not allowed to keep moving with that unit. Not quite sure where I looked that up. Maybe there's a prohibition on movement or something here. Yeah, no leader or army may participate in a move action if they were part of a formation that lost a field battle earlier in the impulse. So I've got to figure out where to use the 2 extra points. I was kind of hoping to, well, I wouldn't be able to drop a siege, but I don't know what I was hoping. Finish things up by building a couple of militia up in Paris. Working for next turn, I guess. I'll put it over to the Muslim turn again, and I need a break. The Muslims are tied down under these plague markers, don't really want to do much about that. My actual cards, I ended up playing the Sea Fog card because I won the naval battle. I don't expect any danger there. I spent to move into Gibraltar and siege it. Again, turned out a horrible result. I took 3 hits, while the Spaniards took nothing. Even though I had more dice. So, not getting where I want to with them. The Portuguese, I played their Joanna card to try to raise more troops. I got a couple. I went with occupied spaces. Didn't end up doing as much as I would hope, though. Spaniards play the Crown of Aragon card in order to build up forces under Ferdinand and make it almost certain that Charles isn't going anywhere, for whatever that's worth. Feels very stymied by their hand as well as the situation. I've got, my main army based down here. And outclassed a little bit by Ferdinand's force. I don't really have much else I can do. I'm going to look at the leader movement rules. If I can spend a point and move a leader to any location, that might actually help me, because then I can use the rise of France, get a few extra troops. The alternative is a single leader formation from a home key using spring deployment. That's at least it gives me a couple of points of actions in addition to the movement, but that's a lot to use this card for. I just feel like I've got cards, I just don't have forces to do anything with them. Of course, I can use the cards to build forces, but then I won't have forces. Like, I won't have the cards anymore. Let me see about redeploying a leader. If there's any kind of special rule for a leader moving alone. I vaguely remember there being such, but it may just be that they can move alone without worrying about certain other aspects. I'll find that relatively easily. I mean, I looked around for leaders or anything, but one or more leaders can move without accompanying units as long as they don't enter a space. There doesn't appear to be anything in there that makes it cheaper. I still have to pay a card point per space that or two if it's across a pass, that the leader alone has to move. That makes it kind of ugly. And what are my restrictions on Italy? Before I do the Master of Italy, so I'm thinking about gathering here and trying to do something. What is this? Yeah, that's not useful. Yeah, what are my limitations? Genoa, Florence, and Venice. Yeah, it just prevents me from declaring war. So I could move into Nice. There's nothing. I mean, I guess I could go up for Milan. Start heading that way. Allied forces can operate together, so yeah, I can pick the Venetians up. Just played this to get a cav and a couple of militia with turmoil there, and I'll try moving him into the Italy sector, I guess. I feel completely like I'm just blundering around with the French, and I guess since I made it around, it's a good time to break again. Although the turns are getting, the times around are getting easier as the hands are getting small real fast. I'll back up here because I've only got about a half hour until raid time. I did manage to set up I don't know what, a switch, an internet switch. I could have just moved my router down, but I bought the switch instead, and I'm not sure why I chose to do that. I'm going to move my wife's computer down to my bedroom so that I can use both there. And also so that I can kind of better secure things. But on the Muslim side, I've got 2 cards left. I could just hold, well, I could just hold one of them. This is not great, no matter how you look at it. I really want to do that siege, so I'm going to play the Mercenary Militia card for this, and nothing allows me to get any more points. But if I play it for 2 points instead of getting the troops for it, because I'm not allowed to play this for the Nazrid. All these are starred, so I can't use that card for them. I can only use it for the North Africans. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but this 2 points, it'll allow me to do another siege, but I converted 2 of my cav into infantry so that I have a shot at doing the siege. I'll still have a point left. I don't know what the fuck to do with that point. Because the Zahara seizure card was already played, I don't get much out of this. I would have gotten more out of it if I'd managed in the first one, but I do manage to succeed. I use that extra point to build myself some militia with the North Africans. It's really painful. I would love to do like piracy or something, but there's just no, piracy costs 2 each. I'll probably be using this for piracy. I gotta play that as well, so I'm not gonna have any cards to hold. It does allow North Africans to come in and help support whatever these are, the Nazrids. I'm trying to remember, like, because the card is what triggered the war, I'm really not sure. There's like special rules for everything, but there's special rules for the Nazrid and the, no, I'm in 16, I need to be in like 20, I think. The North African Alliance. I don't see them under the North African rules, but there's something special that allows them to be at war with whoever the Nazrid are at war with. And I don't know how that was triggered, and if it is, by that card. So the particular card should be here, if I find it. There's a state of war between the Nazrids and the Spanish for the remainder of the game, but I thought there was something. It may be under the diplomacy stage. I don't know where I'm gonna fucking find it. This is what the whole game is about. Let me look to see if I can find it there. I know that there's something that allows them to operate together in a war, and honestly, following the card, I didn't do it, but I think I would put the North Africans at war with Spain too. Although, who knows, because the declarations of war happen after some other things, but that card was played as a headline. I don't know if it would have allowed me to. Headlines happen after negotiation. So you know what? I may just leave it alone for the simple fact that I'm already facing the Portuguese down there and they're beating me up. It's like a 5-point card to put North Africa at war with Aragon and Castile on their own. I found the rule. If one of the powers controlled by the Muslim was targeted by a DOW, the Muslim may decide to include his other major power in the war for the free. Did I want the Nazrids to be at war with the Portuguese, which I think would put them at war with the Beltranejos as well. that just seems like asking for it. Okay, so we'll leave things as they are because I could not have done it with the automatic Mulsi Hassan card. That's actually specifically excluded, which is good. Well, for some reason I've been doing this completely wrong. I thought the conditional guys got to do something with their cards, but I'm looking at the home cards, and Spain has all 3 home cards available. The other 3 players receive their third on turn 2 or 3 or 4. The Spanish player will always use all 3 of their home cards. I've been burying one on them each turn because I thought that's what I did. Other players get 2, except Portugal with the piece of Alcaçovas, which I guess I get to play all 3. When a player other than Spain has 3 home cards and plays the second, they must discard one immediately. Okay, that's not going to apply for France. That doesn't apply yet for the Muslims. The Portuguese, they just got their third card, and they've got it in hand. I wanted to make sure they could play it. Unfortunately, I thought Spain was not the special case. I thought the special case was just Portugal. Because I remembered the Portuguese special case, and I thought it also applied to others. For example, the Muslims, once they get the Sultanate, once they get, the Barbary Pirates, that they'd be able to play all 3. They're not. But the Barbary Pirates, these are both North African cards. So yeah, I just, fucking shit up, right? And there's nothing I can do to replace that. But that would have put Spain in a better position. They're doing okay, but anyway. Portuguese are playing a big 5-point card and moving here into Tangier with the first point. Put that there. This is an opportunity he would have to intercept. Now, again, by strict reading of the rules of the card, I'm not sure what, not of the card, but of the plague. But it doesn't really make sense that you'd be able to intercept your way out of a plague, right? It's just so fucking disturbing when there's something along these lines. But anyway, that's the reason why it was worth playing. So that's how I'm playing with it. It's a little vague in my opinion. I think by a strict reading of the rules, they should be able to intercept without it being movement. I have to look it up again to be able to tell you. No unit may enter a space with plague. Each land or naval unit that attempts to move out of a space with a plague, either spring or action phases, must roll. I'm slanting more towards that does count the interception, but I think I'm using my bias of reasonableness there. So anyway, the question is, do I want to intercept this force under Joao, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have more. I have some cav, which helps. So I have 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm already a little weaker, but if I intercept, chances are I lose half my strength. Which doesn't seem terribly wise to me, so I'm going to let the Portuguese continue on. Although I would get another interception chance here with up to 4 strength points, which is what it has. Again, it would be reduced. It wouldn't have a leader. It would probably be a really bad battle. There's sort of the, maybe I should just try and hope for the best so that the Portuguese don't seize my entire coast. Because that big 5-point card, 1, 2, 3, 4, I lay siege, and then they have another point. Did I have a 4-point card? No, I didn't. And I have things I want to do with the other cards, but I'd really like to get the points so that I can play this. If I can get, how many do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be my 5th. Oh, I need an extra movement point for that. That's why. So I actually had it counted out right. 1, 2, 3, 4 to convert, 5 to move in. So, do I want to chance it? God. I mean, I'm already gonna, yeah, I'm gonna be weaker anyway. Whereas, and this can beef up, I don't know, there's not much I can beef up, really. Just afraid I'm gonna lose that entire coast because of the plague. Well, I can always do piracy or something. Yeah, but then I don't need the troops. Right. Yeah, but these guys only die on a 1 in 6 if I leave them there. And that's the real advantage. So I'll let him keep going. 2, 3. It's not worth anything. And then 4 for, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. Pain in the ass counting in this game for me. All right, that's going to put it on the Spaniards. Spanish spend their big card to move against the Beltranejos. I want to wipe them out. Well, we had an incredibly bloody battle. You can see a lot of 6s and 5s. I've moved the dice over with a cav charge involved, whatnot. And now I'm sieging Cordoba for what that's worth. I don't think I'm going to be able to take them out this turn. I don't have very many forces left. I didn't play Seat of an Empire, which would allow me to put units, a bunch of units in a home space, which Cordoba is. And then, you know, maybe be able to prosecute further. But there are 1, 2 of these keys left, and I don't think I have enough gas to take both of them, especially since they're defended, which is, oh no, 3. At Toledo too. Oh boy. Yeah, I just don't think, and there's nothing under Isabel. She gave her troops over to the captain. So what do I do with the remaining 5 points is the big question. My plan had been 1, 2, 3 to here of those 5. But instead I realized, wait a minute, I got to take care of these Mestas. So I built a unit, 1, 2, 3, converted that. Now I got 2 points left. I could build a Naus. That might not be a terrible choice. Other things that I might be able to do of value. I mean, I could move forces up to get up there, but that doesn't actually help me. I can move forces down, which does help me a little bit. I really don't know. It makes a lot of sense to spend 1, 2 movement to get 2 forces down there. I just built 2 militia in there, which is quite often the kind of thing I'm finding myself doing. And the French drop a big 3-point card to move down 1. Oh, how about that? That doesn't look like it connects. Oh, well, I cheated again. I moved 1, 2, 3 into Nice. I would have probably had to use a bigger card, but now I've done the battle, and I don't have a 4-point card. So I'm not gonna blow a bigger card just because I can't see that there's no connection there. The coastline looks like a connection. Anyway, we'll give France a point. They're having enough trouble anyway. I mean, they're winning. So I moved them in to attack Nice, and because I didn't do a cav charge, force didn't count because I only had one regular type thing, a cav. I didn't know if the leader counted or not. You know, again, like, a lot of it's just, there's too many rules with the fours. Everything's too complicated in this for what an abstract game it seems like it's trying to be, you know. Yeah. But and it's just hard for me to devote myself, you know, to something that I feel like the style of game it is one in which I should be concentrating on the card play and everything. And I got bounced out anyway, although I did cause a casualty. That is one general feeling I have, actually, is that I'm doing a lot of effort and nothing's happening, which to me might be how Virgin Queen felt. I don't really remember that too much. Really not how Here I Stand felt. Huge things were swinging with religious conversions and everything happening all over the place, that it really didn't feel like nothing was happening. Maybe not much was happening militarily, but the other stuff felt so clean compared to this game. And again, you know, there's other stuff happening that's non-military. There's no question about that. It just feels like this big confusion where I'm not able to see that really having much impact on the map for the most part. And every time I try to do something with a couple extra points I have or something, the something I want to do ends up being more expensive. Like, I'm focusing heavily on the military, and that's not getting me anywhere. With the exception of, honestly, I don't know, the Portuguese are making some movement, and the Catalans were knocked out pretty easily. But France certainly has not been able to do much of anything. But they're in the lead. So, you know, it's funny. I feel like I'm failing with France everywhere, yet they have the most victory points. And that's not a good feeling when the game just doesn't make sense to you in that sort of way. That like, everything I actually tried to do is just not doing me shit. But the things that like I'm doing with excess points and everything, they're getting me piles and piles of victory points over here that can't be taken away. Yes, I'm still holding Roussillon, that could fall. I'm holding alliances that are really shaky points, right? Those could go away very easily through the play of a card or whatever. Anyway, we're going to go play Raid and let the Muslims think about their turn while I'm gone. Here I am, Monday, I guess still morning, late morning. Ready to play. And again, you know, the usual shit for me, where it's like, yeah, I need to go shopping. Not today. It's a pretty day. It's supposed to be pretty all week until Friday. But, and then so much other stuff that I should be doing, but I don't want to. You know, I want it all to just end. But it ain't gonna happen. All right, on to the Muslims, who are down to their last card, and it's one they must play. They decide to burn the first couple of points on a piracy attack against the Portuguese, which seems like a good idea. You know, I wiped out their navy. They have two fortresses, unfortunately, which gave them a couple of dice of defense. I only had one Corsair, so moving into here would have given me less dice on attack, but I ended up taking a hit on my Corsair, meaning I can't continue my piracy, and did nothing. I don't know what to do with the remaining 3 points. That's enough to do something interesting with, at least. I could have pushed piracy further into here or here. Well, this would have given me less dice, but there's way too many fortresses here. Actually, it would have to be here, because I can only move once. Got my little marker, I can't do piracy there again. Instead, I built it now and decided to try to explore. It failed. So, like I said, it feels like a whole bunch of nothing happening a lot of times in this game. Portuguese burn their big home card. This is an iffy choice. They could have played their 3-point Albuquerque card, trying to play this for victory points. They burn their big home card. If they had succeeded in their siege, which is what they did with the first point of it, taking Anfa, then I could move. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for a battle. I'd still need to find another point to convert this space, but I would have had all the ports, which would be really, really cool. That didn't happen. I lost the siege, or I won the siege, or I did better in the siege, but I didn't get enough to take it. I'm not allowed to siege that space again on this impulse. And now I got 4 more points that I just don't know what I want to do with. I can't use them on the Beltranejos. I'll try to figure out what I want to do. But again, kind of locked in. Had plans, thought I had everything locked down, nice stuff. Had a lot of cards. I do still have a 3-point card that I don't particularly want to use for this, but it won't be enough. It won't be enough to get me the space, right? 1, 2, 3. So I probably will not use that for that. So then the question is, do I play this later? How many ports do I have total? 1, 2, 3. I'll have 5, which is the minimum to get any victory points. Oh, that's pretty good. No, 5 is not the minimum to get any victory. 5 would still get me the 3 victory points. So yeah, all I have to do is take this to get this card fired off. There's the Master of the Atlantic thing, which I think means I have to take all of them, all of the ports, or Master of North Africa, or something like that. Who the hell knows? Which, you know, is another part of what makes it kind of difficult, is I'm hunting for what is the piece that allows me to, you know, get this. And I don't know. Wow, there's this Portuguese settlements. I bet you that's worth victory points. Like, it looks like victory points. I bet you I got some of them. I had to look that up. I just found some counters that probably refer to one of them special rules that applies to me now. Looking in the Portuguese rules, I don't see anything about these settlements. First of all, I don't see a picture for them. We're down to the Beltranejos here, so that won't be part of it. Although, oddly enough, the Treaty of Tordesillas makes sense that the piece of Alcaçovas is there. Treaty of Tordesillas is actually under the Beltranejos, not under Portugal. So who knows? Maybe there's more there. I don't see it. Both treaties affect both powers, so it kind of makes sense. It's just weird. But yeah, I don't see anything that applies to these Portuguese settlement points here. This mandatory card does not get removed, so it could come up many turns. So I want to get it back in the deck. I definitely want to play that for points. The question is, of course, do I want to get that 5th port? Is that worth playing another card for? I'm still trying to decide what I haven't even put any thought into, because I went chasing after, you know, special rule that I expect there to be because I have counters, but nah, no special rule for it. Although, you know, the North African Coast Port Control, which is based on this card, does have a special rule, but it also has effect if I take all the ports. I get an immediate 3 points of that type. That is special, and there's no way to record that special as far as I know. Maybe. Portuguese supremacy of the Atlantic coast. Maybe that's something else. Yeah, there's the Atlantic supremacy chit. So yeah, that's actually a different thing. This one, I don't know why this one is listed. And other card-based stuff is not. Very disturbing to me, but yep. I have 4 points. I could build a Naus, I think, on a settlement. I'm not sure about that. Gotta look that up. Lots of cards allow you to build Nauses on settlements. Actually, I don't think I'm allowed to. I think they've got to start there, but I'm not positive, so I'll have to look it up. But let's say it's here. That would cost me 2. Then I have 1, 2 I could get to here. Moving through here, I could get that cartography space. I wouldn't get anywhere off this, so that doesn't seem terribly valuable. Just building one might be worth it. I've at least got something decent there. What I'd really like to do, another thing, if I can build it on the settlement, which I could do with the Albuquerque card, if I wasn't needing to use that for my battles. But that doesn't help with my 4 points here. If I could build it here, I could, and I might have extra points, right? Because 1, 2, 3, I'm not going to be able to get this anyway. So I would have 2 extra points, which would allow naval moves. If I build a Naus here, if this is allowed, 2 movement points would allow me to sail out and then build another settlement here. But I don't think I'm allowed to build on the settlements except by cards. Gotta look it up. Blew the remainder of my card points on building that Naus and doing a couple of cartography checks here. Neither one succeeded. Be worth a victory point to get. And then I'm counting on my next card play allowing me to take this, I hope, move down here and build the settlement there. Because apparently there's some sort of victory points I'm going to get off some kind of card that is not in the rules. They gets me points for having lots and lots of settlements. And yeah, that seems like a good idea. That'll move it to the Spanish turn. I'm beginning to feel fatigued by the amount of effort I've had to put in, again, on a turn, on a single card play, you know. Just rules lookups and all that, so I guess I'll go watch some video or something. Wish I could devote myself to doing something more useful, even playing the game, but yeah, it's starting to get gray again. The park people came and cut up some of my wood, and I'm thinking about going down and videoing that, but they really did sort of like half the job, to tell you the truth. I had to leave to go for a walk or whatever, and they continued. I don't know for how long. By the time I got home, they were no longer cutting, but I took a couple hours walk or whatever. But it wasn't that late, you know, and like it wasn't the end of the workday or whatever. And they haven't been back, and they've left, like, you know, first of all, they left chunks that were much larger than I thought they would, but whatever, I kind of gave them that permission as far as I'm concerned, fine. But they also left like logs, you know, trunk of tree that's, they could not have possibly removed it from my yard. You know, like, had they done the cleanup that they should have done, and I hadn't asked them to leave me some wood, you know, to leave me the wood that they cut, which should have made things easier on them at least, they would have had to cut the trees much, much smaller than they did. There's no way they could have lifted and carried the chunks that they had out. Being down to just a couple of cards, that means I can't do much. I have to look around. I've got a siege here that I probably want to complete, but man, like, I have the Grand Capitano, who will help me a lot. That gets me 3 dice on a shot at it. But I think that means I will need to play this card for points, because I kind of like the idea of seizing the Alhambra. I think that's a good card to have. But if I play this for points, what else can I do, you know? And this is a Castile card, so it's okay. Yeah, such a pain in the ass. The weather, you know, it was pretty at one point, and that depresses me because, like, I knew I wasn't going to go out and do anything. It would have been fine if I went shopping or whatever in this, although it's still pretty wet and it's going to dry up in the next couple days or whatever. Wow, that's a lot of sawdust there. But, you know, as soon as it turns kind of ugly, at least, it's not terrible. But as soon as it turns less than pretty, I'm like a lot more capable of coping with, you know, the life choices I'm making. 1 point got me a success with the siege. Great. You know, I don't want to be in a position where I'm sieging something at the end of the turn, because then I have to withdraw and I lose whatever points I got to get me there. I also built myself a now and sailed here, got success with the cartography. I'm allowed to explore, I'm just not allowed to settle in stuff over here. I don't know quite what the limits are, but I know I can't do it anywhere in Africa. And I don't have the overseas, I don't have Columbus, whatever, so there's not a lot I can do, but okay. And then I used the final remaining point to shift some stuff up here, and I hope that they don't have to withdraw or whatever. I'm tired of looking up rules for every single fucking action. That's what the game requires to be able to play it at all reasonably. Yeah. On to France. My last French turn I cheated because I thought there was a connection here between these two. It looked like it with counters on the board. It doesn't look like it now. I'm going to charge them an extra point off this next card as an attempt to make up for that. Play a card that doesn't do them a lot of good. It is an event, gives them 3 points. I have 2 cards, I can hold both of them as my home cards have already been spent and nothing's mandatory or anything like that. Managed to capture Nice and take it over. One thing that I thought about, I was going to buy a militia to help my attempt to attack, right? Because I'm like, okay, I need 1 point because of my being, you know, screwing up last time. 1 point to move in, doesn't cost anything to fight the battle, moving in costs that. And so I got 1 point left over. Let me buy the militia. Now, soon as I started counting dice for the battle, I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta have another point so that I can flip the space over to mine and get the victory point for it. All of which worked fine, but it's just something in the counting that's sort of unnatural to me. Muslims are going to pass, that's going to put me to Portugal. Play a 3-point card, use the first point, I succeed in doing this. What was I going to do with the next 2 points? I don't remember. I don't remember. I could actually move here and take this. That doesn't help me though. For this turn, for playing this card. Was I going to build another now? It's a good one. All the rest are on the table. No, I had one in play. That's right. I was going to go explore here. Okay. This is my walking away, or switching hats even would do this. I would probably remember this kind of action between player turns if I was playing just one side, sitting at a table, constantly fixated on the game. But that's not how I tend to play. So, yep. Points, I have enough to sail here and then enact the settlement. Oh, These are the two I'm not allowed to. But Tordesillas will change that, and there's more spaces, I think. And that gets rid of the Portuguese action for the turn, bringing it back around to the Spaniards. I've got 2 cards I can hold, so I could hold this card. However, the advantage is too great to play it, I think. So we're going to seize Alhambra, and that's going to reduce the Nasrid units, and we get in there. It doesn't give us victory points or anything. It just feels like a good idea to play this card. This particular card is worded. The Spanish player eliminates half of the Nasrid units present there. I think he gets to make the choice as to which units to destroy. Are those all cav? I can't tell. This is not. This is militia. So I think this is different from that. This looks like 2 men running. This is 1. And it's rounded up. So I will also kill that. Yeah, the cav is really a problem in this game. And then the forces withdraw. They're displaced. Since I have my leader there, if I displace into the fortress, I've got to return to a key. If I don't displace into a fortress, people have to return to a key. And 4 Castilian militia show up there. Well, we'll fall back on Granada there. Let's see, anything else here? So now, from now on, I can recruit militia in Alhambra as if it were a limited home space. Place the Alhambra event marker, which I already did, to remind me of this. This card's removed from the game, so I'm going to put this here to kind of remember what it does. Okay, so many cards that are like, this one has to go back in the deck before its -1 card takes effect. But I'm hoping I can remember that. That's the end of the Spanish cards. Does this do anything for me? I've got these Alhambra victory points here. They look like they're points that would go to the Nasrid player. So again, we're going to have to look up rules, see if there's anything going on with there. Why I haven't collected any yet since I've held it all this time, I don't know. I don't know the specifics of that. Let's take a look. The Nasrid are over here, all their rules. Oh, good Lord, they have a fucking load of rules. So they have Gibraltar rules. I'm going to just look for the picture because there's way too many things here. Like this all has to do with the Nasrid control, swinging around and whatnot. This might be points that they get when they surrender. We could go look at their surrender rules, see if they're like the Catalans. I'm just like, why are those counters in existence, right? So Nasrid. Spanish player gets a VP marker for Reconquest. Oh, good Lord. He gains VP markers from Alhambra for Aragonese and Castilian home spaces controlled. Okay. So that's what those counters are for. I don't think they're for owning Alhambra. But let's just make sure the Spanish don't get anything for it. I don't see anything for it there. So I'm going to just take these out. They're not related to the location. And maybe, you know, there's cards that also generate those points. I don't know. I don't remember anything else that generates them. I thought they were location-based in the sense that, like, taking it is worth something. Maybe even to the Spaniards, but turns out it's not. Okay. France and Portugal have cards. Portugal knows what they're doing. France, I don't know. Passes. Portugal's going to play their Master of the Atlantic. They must actually play this. They gain victory points on control. Do they have 5 ports? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So they get 3 victory points for Master of the Atlantic. There we go. There's a 3. I don't know what's on the back of these. Different scores. That's usual. And that puts Portugal in the lead. If one of these were to fall heavily, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If France were to fall heavily below and like just collapse, Portugal would win the game. This puts me in a coin-like situation. Here I stand also had this, where you kind of got to make sure, like, this is a big deal for Spain of all people probably. You got to make sure you don't take the French down too much without gaining some ground, because right now the Portuguese are in a position where they're far enough ahead of third place that they would just automatically win the game. That's all the cards. This goes back in the deck as a mandatory, really cool card in the sense that very random, right? This can come up again and again, and if the Portuguese choose this path and get that card again and again, they're going to score a lot of victory points. Probably the same thing with the settlements. If they have a lot of settlements and that card just happens to come up, there's not much you can do about it. You can burn it as a headline event that you're trying to destroy, right? That's about the only thing you can do to prevent Portugal from getting those points, even if you get the card. And do you get anything out of this shit? I mean, you get the three command points that you get out of playing a mandatory card. Speaking of which, Portugal gets 3. I forgot. What am I going to fucking do with that? Oh, son of a bitch. I don't know. Yeah, I built another Naus. Now, I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure that they didn't build more than 3 this turn. But they've got like 3 already in the returning and one more. So they've got 4 on the returning. I'm not convinced. I don't remember what I built and what I didn't. They've got a limitation. They can only build 3 per turn. No one else can build more than 2. I don't think I can build this. I'm just not convinced that I can. So we will build another fortification. I don't feel like this seems key to me, and it's what I would fortify in EU. But I also don't think that other people are going to go exploring down here as easily. So I'm going to fortify Sao Tome instead. And that'll help, I think, with extraction of resources, which, let's face it, are slaves probably. Yeah, not really. So yes, the Portuguese were heavily invested in the slave trade, but it would be pretty minor at this point because they don't have anywhere to put them, and no one else does either. So there's nowhere to ship the slaves that's particularly valuable, which means, yeah, you might get a few, but probably most of what resources they're pulling at this stage would still be, gold and I don't know what else they want. There's definitely gold there. All right, what does that put me to? That puts me down to the winter phase, and I don't feel like doing that quite yet. So it's break time again. Okay, let's see what we can get done. Get this wrapped up so we can send it up before raid time. 3 new mandatory events. Innocent VIII, the Pope. Sixtus IV dies. Place this card as the new papal ruler. Resolve control of the papacy. Affinity 3 for Spain, 1 for Portugal. That gets rid of Sixtus. And let's resolve what happens to the papacy here. Person with the highest die roll was the Spaniards, and so they'll get the papal bull on this next turn. Major swing between them and France. Territory switch hands, another major switch, France falling back, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Spain now within the realm, so that, like, even if France continues to fall back, Portugal's not far enough ahead to get an automatic win. The marker here, of course, changes. And I'm not sure I did this last time, but Spain got a couple of points on the diplomacy. They can't take it in Navarre or Papacy. They took it in Venice. They don't have to take it for themselves. They could negate somebody else's points. But unless you're at the top of a level on something, there's very little reason. I guess if something could be inactivated or something along those lines, there could be a reason to drop somebody rather than increase your own. But for the most part, I think you just want to pad your own points. Trying to seize Venice, that would be another big swing in the points as well as in the power situation that's sitting in Italy right now. I think that's the end of that one. So let's go to the next one. El Zagal seizes power. Muli Hassan dies. Place this card as ruler of the Muslim player card. He's definitely a little better. 5-point charisma. Same admin. Not a big deal there. And then the Treaty of Etaples, the 100 Years' War ends and free trade begins across the North Sea. The French player moves the troops in the garrison box with England to Paris. The troops. That's a big chunk of force that I'm able to bring into play there. Place the naval squadron in Casanova in a French home port. I think I'll put him way down here in Marseille. These troops may now move freely. Each French trade marker now agreeing +1 on the North Sea trade rules. So I'm able to buy trade, one of the functions here, whenever I have 2 points or whatever. I also should get the Treaty of Etaples somewhere. Wonder where it is. That's the one that's not on the board. What did I fucking do with it? Like, I don't know what the fuck happened to it. There's a marker for that. And I don't know where it's migrated to or why. This didn't get played before. This is a one-time event. Huh. I may have it in that pile, but I don't see it. It was over here, and I don't know why. I do not know why. I'm not sure how that's supposed to be aligned. I thought all the treaties were set up over there at this point, but it kind of feels like the fact that it's on here indicates that it could be played, or that it was played rather than could be. Let's go look and see. First in the rules, but there's also the setup thing. France moves the units in the garrison, die roll modifiers, yeah. Provides these benefits. I thought it said 3. Okay, so this is one of the 3 I need. I can do Barcelona and Senlis. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to put this treaty. Let's see if the scenario book told me to set them up on the card, which we'll see them listed there. Really not sure which way it's supposed to go. Regardless, there's not really a means for these. I don't know. I'm going to remove this at this point because I think now it has been signed. There's nothing all that special. I don't know why it moved into the box before. Maybe it's a matter that I don't have the opportunity to sign it, whereas these I actually had the opportunity to sign, which is kind of the point behind them, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, that has been signed. That's my 3 events. Boy, I'm wiped out now. Military order, discard unused resources. There aren't any. Removed loaned markers from naval units. Okay. That'll be that one. Deaths from plague. Okay. So yeah, I have to roll for every unit on a 1. I have to roll a number of dice equal to the number of units there. For each 1, a unit is destroyed. But I also, where is winter? Is it before or after special rules? There we go. Also, each leader on a 1 becomes ill and won't be available in the next turn. Similarly, the militia that are not in home keys nor with a leader had to have rolls. We had a few of them disappear, just 1 or 2 off most of the powers. The big one was the plague that hit a couple of strength points. Of militia, of course. Leaders and units return to fortified spaces, and then we get additional forces. And I'm doing these, of course, in player order, as always. As I worked my way through that, I did the Muslims, I'm on the Portuguese now. It's nice and warm up here. It's kind of funny, I'm thinking I could not use my space heater, move up here as my bedroom office, whatever. I don't know how I feel about it, but the main reason I wanted the bedroom that I had was sort of a privacy type thing. It had a door and everything. I don't need that anymore. Of course, I don't know what I'd do with that space. Plus, it has a carpeting, which makes life a little easier for sleeping on the floor. I mean, I have some padding, but just a thought. Kind of a weird one. Kind of thinking, I could set up my desk facing out that way, which would be kind of interesting. Would be kind of enough room for bedding. One of those things to consider. Now, of course, then I don't need the switch that I bought at all, because I got my router up here, just in case I ever want to use, my wife's laptop, because my tablet is long dead. Okay, so we returned units and built 1 unit per power. This is the state of the map. I don't know how much it matters, but you're seeing big piles, being developed. Paris. Tremoille has a fairly big force now. The reason it's okay to run all the way back here is I get a spring redeployment where I can shove myself all the way up to Emporius, I believe, if I want to fight. The Aragonese, which I don't know what else to do. I have a couple of choices. I can either shift Tremoille over to here and worry about Metz, or I can shift him this way and worry about moving Tremoille into Italy, where I'd be able to attack Milan. Really not sure which one I want to do at this point. Everyone else has pretty easy choices, I think. None of the miners moved. You can make an argument that there's no real reason to be here. That I could pull the Genoese back to Genoa. I don't feel like that's all that advantageous, but I could do it. The Venetians, they're doing exactly what I want them to do sitting in Otranto. That's not a bad thing. There's some advantage to Otranto, I don't remember what it is. I mean, other than the one for the Muslims, that they can treat it like a home key or whatever in terms of keeping forces there. I'm on the return of nows to settlements or roll a navigation check to remain at sea. There's one now on the board, which is the Spanish one. I kind of put it there with the thought that it would be blocking, it would be subjecting returns to plunder. I looked at the plunder of naval resources roll, which is unfortunately like after the chart, and so it was kind of hard to see. But basically, a power must attempt to plunder naval resources coming from settlements in ocean zones 1 to 6, which is all the east, if they control 5 or more ports on the African coast between Agadir and Tangier. Anfa counts as 2 for this purpose. If any power meets this requirement, naval resource return rolls use the subject to plunder. I don't think there's any piracy capable. Like, I would have to do the piracy action to do that, so I kind of wasted. And part of what convinced me to sail out there was, oh, I might get plunder, but I want to just return so they don't get damaged instead. And then naval squadrons return, and then the resources, I make the rolls for where the resources are, and then for the special resources as well. And I'll just kind of show you what I get out of it, I guess. Weird, it's on a per zone basis, and I have very few, even though I have a lot of settlements, I don't have a lot of resources because I didn't get anything that gave me resources, and these settlements were all made this turn. But you roll on a per area basis. On a 5, as long as, you know, it's not plundered, one arrives. Well, that's all I got. I need to roll a 2 through 4 for something bad to happen. We're gonna just put things there. Here's what I got from these. I think the regular appears immediately. I'm not sure about the card because that would potentially overflow the admin rating, so I think that gets held until the next card draw phase, but I have to look that up. Anyway, well, let's roll for the other Portuguese resource. Well, that one didn't make it. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah. I don't think there are any draws before it gets put back in, but I don't want to deal yet. Oh, yes, there are. There's the Mestas and all that. Take a look at everything that happened. I went through the rest of the bookkeeping. The Franco-Portuguese alliance ended. Piracy markers removed. Diplomacy reset. There was nothing to be reset. Including the minus admin ratings. Nobody took one. Okay. So let's take a look at what people have. Yeah, there was a card and a regular there. Here they got some command points, great. I don't have to worry about that. Here's some command points again, great. The French got some command points and they got a cav. Now I make sure when these get allocated. Okay, so I fucked this up last time. A resource that awards, so VPs automatically happen. CPs are in the warehouse. A resource that awards a card draw must be placed on the turn track, so it's not available in the pool next time. And they get a +1 card marker over the ruler of the appropriate card. That additional card draw is received. You got to remember, like, this is the Roussillon card draw. This is the -1 card that I get from the Kingdom Tribute. Fine, if I can cancel that out, that'd be great, because that's confusing enough. But yeah, the card draw here is going to be obnoxious. Instead of a +1 card, since it doesn't show up until the next turn, I'm going to actually just put it here, because that'll remind me where it came from. And putting it on the turn track, I don't know, again, this is the finicky kind of stuff. I threw it back in the cup and drew the card. I don't know. I think the only time I got one of those was during the turn. So, but, you know, it's a weird situation that, like, there's this one finicky rule. Let's look at the others. Free units are also placed on the turn track, but you add them immediately. First on keys, then a fortified space, then a strategic space. It's going to show up on a key unless you've lost all your keys, which is pretty horrible. Now, at other phases, a card draw happens immediately, and CPs can be spent during the turn, which can end up putting you in a position where you don't have the capability to play that counter, and you lose it at the end of the turn. Remember, the warehouses get cleared out sometime back here, which, again, is this weird sort of finicky thing that, like, doesn't actually resolve, you know, actually creates a problem as far as I'm concerned. You got these resources, but you can't use them under some circumstances. So, yeah, I'll place the troops, I guess. Another interesting thing. This came to the North Africans. I think it can only be used for a North African troop. It can't be used for a Nasrid troop. Card doesn't really matter. Any of your powers get it. But yeah, whoever is actually extracting it. Now, Spain seems like kind of a weirder situation. I guess Castile is doing all the exploration always. It's not absolutely certain to me, but all the counters for it appear to be Castilian rather than Aragonese. They're not split or anything like that. So again, the settlements and whatnot, I think, are owned by the Crown of Castile specifically. That makes sense to me, but again, this is not, you know, specifically called out. It's just a matter of using reason, I guess. Weirder, putting it on the turn track almost doesn't even make sense, right? That's going to be on the next turn. So it's like, I think they just stay in the pool, essentially. And therefore, I'll just throw this one back in because there aren't going to be any more resources. Now we're at the marriage resolution. Now, I already resolved this, and I think I was supposed to. I believe it happened immediately, as opposed to dealing with this. But yeah, that's this immediately arranged and automatically successful. Yeah, I guess that automatically happened already. But what is also possible is death of a royal marriage. It's turn 3. And let's see. We have Isabella and Alfonso are married. On ones they die, even though they're married and everything. Neither one dies, so they remain married. The marriage remains in effect up there towards isolation. And then victory determination. Okay. Whoa! Okay. Check for surrender of Catalonia, Beltranos, or Beltranejos, or Nasrids. None of them are happening this turn. They all have keys if they exist. Award VP markers for Catalan ownership of Barcelona. No. The Reconquista or Narid resistance. I don't believe either one's in effect. I think the Nasrid resistance is only after they fall. VP for Lord of Italy. Did I miss this last time? 5 of 8 of Naples, Rome. I had Rome. I had Ravenna. That was 2. Genoa, Venice, maybe last turn got me to 4, and Otranto got me to 5. Do I have a Lord of Italy in here? Yeah, I do. So I collected this last turn. This turn, though, I don't, because I lost Ravenna and Rome to the Spanish, because the papacy has switched sides. So I don't have enough to get a Lord of Italy point anymore. Turn 7, possible benefits for captured leaders. No. And we check for a winner. There isn't one. So we go to another turn. I got to swap batteries. I'll load this up. Well, let me speak some words after I swap. The biggest thing that happened this turn seems to be the Portuguese gaining control of a big hunk of the coast, getting a lot more of their exploration and settlements done over here. Built a few fortresses. I feel pretty happy with where they're at. No wonder they're in the lead. Spain tried some maneuvering against the Beltranejos. They didn't really get anywhere. The siege ended up leaving them with not enough troops to continue. And cards are always such a significant limitation that, you know, I mean, that's just the nature of CDGs, right? Like, you feel like you have an overwhelming force or whatever, and yeah, you're running out of points, or you either run out of troops, which feels fine, or you run out of card points, which doesn't feel so good. When you run out of troops, you can build more with your card points, but yeah. Stalemate down here between Aragon and France. The French gained Nice. Whoop, 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 whoop. Much bigger effect was the random effect of the of Rome switching hands, which was kind of just big. I mean, and you know, very little could have been done about it. I could have boosted some diplomatic points to make the next pope more in my favor, but he would, I think, naturally be against me. I'm not sure if the Curia takes into account the papal, what do they call it here? Affinities. That may only be when the Pope comes in. And not a lot happened, is what it really feels like. Like, the Nazarids kind of failed to do anything of any importance. We had the Alhambra, but I'm not sure that means much. You know, it felt like, oh, I want to do that card. It's a 5-point card. And I mean, taking a fortress, you know, it took me like a 5-point card to take this, right? I don't know. I think this one counts as 2. I hope I counted correctly on that card. Right? Not that card. Not that card. Where's the card I'm looking for? Oh, this card. Not thrown away. 5 ports was the maximum. Okay. So I've actually got an extra port that I can lose, but I need to get these 2 to get my one-time 3-point bonus. Of course, that puts me constantly at war with North Africa if I want to keep that 3-point bonus. But I feel with Portugal in the lead by so much, they want to go for that. Anything else going on? Like, it just feels like so little happened, you know, and I worked so hard with so many cards. The French passed, holding 2 cards, okay. Yeah. It's really a weird situation how little is kind of happening for most of the powers. And again, I compare that to Here I Stand, where honestly, military endeavors don't get you very far in that game either. But so much changes in the religious side of things, and that feels like such a major focus to the game, not just for the papacy and the Protestants, but also, you know, the English are trying to to do their thing with the Bible and whatnot. That like, it often feels like I'm building something up, but here it feels like I'm just at a loss in terms of like getting anything done. You know, the Mestas. I went through a card's worth of points. What did I get out of it? I got 2 command points. But it could have been more, you know. Yeah. And the French got 2 counters off of the med trade, you know. But there they've done some stuff. They have Genoa, they have Venice, they have a big bonus towards that. Did they really do anything for it? No, it just kind of hit them due to the diplomacy chart. You know, there is a lot of randomness in this game. You know, just like if this card comes up every turn, Portugal gets huge bonuses. You know, if and they loved having it because they got to control. You know, they got to delay it so that they could get as many points as they could. If they didn't have it in their hands, they wouldn't have gone to war with North Africa. Whether or not they go to peace with them now, big question. The North Africans have a fair amount of troops and probably want to press the war. But the problem is they're trying to keep this alive. You know, you've always got these balances, and it's like, well, am I in real danger? Is Castile going to come down here? You know, if France and Aragon come to peace, I think the Aragonese forces can move down and start fucking with the Nasrid, because they are at war with them as well. Spain as a whole is at war, and they're allied with the Castilians, so they can move through Castilian territory, grab this on the way, whatever. They could, you know. They could perform the Reconquista instead of the Castilians being mainly focused on it. The Franco-Aragonese War is really kind of fucking both powers up in terms of like creating a stalemate that neither one can get an advantage to. France would love a peace with Spain, and, you know, maybe they can convince the Spaniards, look, we're both losing out on what we want. On the other hand, they're going to have to go back to war with Spain to get their Italian goals. But, you know, they've got Milan and they've got Metz that they've got to take, right? So there's definitely things, you know, that they're being frozen from doing that only really Portugal feels like it had a free hand to move against one opponent and focus on them completely. And in a way they didn't, you know. It's because of the peace of Alcaçovas or whatever it is, I can't remember the name, that they really can't use their points to try to save the Beltranejos anymore, is kind of the situation. Anyway, that gives you kind of an overview of what's going on. I'll come up and give a bit of a recap, more or less the same kind of thing at the beginning of the video like I like to do, but I feel like I need to reassure myself that something happened at the end of each video.